One of the things that happened, which was very, very clear, that indicated there was a county lines model, was kind of the next incident that occurred. Was a young man turned up at the youth offending service. Before we'd opened one day, he was sat at the front door, and the first member of staff found him sat at the front door with injuries to his face and body and blood across his face and body, clearly having had a beating, and really, really very frightened, saying that he needed to talk to us and that he wanted to tell us where he'd been.
To this day, there's still that bit of fear in me, do you know what I mean? Of course there's that fear in you. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen to your mum, your family, anyone. Do you know what I mean? You don't know what's going to happen. Because these people are just fucking reckless, mate.
Hello.
How's your mum doing? I heard she was messing about in people's gardens.
I can't believe you've let me down so soon.
Here's how it's going to work. You and little Ollie there are mine now. You're going to work your asses off until we get back what you owe us and more. I get one more bit of crap from you, either of you, we'll cut both of your mums up so bad that you won't be able to recognise them. You got it? You got it?
Got it.
Alfie's Story is a 4-part film series produced as part of the Notting Hill Community Campaign. The overall purpose is to help viewers understand the form of grooming and child exploitation known as county lines. The things that happen to Alfie, Ollie and the other young people exploited by the organised criminal in the film are based on real events. Millions of people have seen the films, though it's in the local area that it has its greatest meaning. As filmmakers, we set out not only to raise awareness of the risks that young people face, but also to challenge all of us to see young people as the victim, not the problem. For anyone experiencing exploitation like this, we wanted to show that whilst it isn't going to be easy, there are people here to help you get out. We've had the fortune to meet and learn from them, and have seen for ourselves that they really do give a damn about making lives better for victims and their families. In this documentary, you'll hear first-hand accounts from a survivor, local people who've helped us make the films, and some of the professionals working every day to help disrupt organised criminal groups. This is Behind Alfie's Story.
I can remember being a 10-year-old kid thinking, where am I going to be when I'm 17? Now look, I'm 17 and do you know what I mean? It's still the same. But my views are changing, as in, I'm thinking, yeah, 5 years I'm going to be stable, I'm going to have a nice job, nice house, do you know what I mean?
In that scenario, the youth offending service and partners and child protection services work together to make him safe. Because what he was saying to us, and now I've told you what I've told you, you've got to get me out of here. You have got to get me out of it. And I've met lots of kids who were in fear for lots of different reasons, but that was absolutely 100% real to him. So that was the fear, meeting a child that was saying to me, I've got to go, I'm dead. I'm dead. If you leave me here, you've got to get me out.
What we've seen over recent years is that the exploitation of people is the #1 commodity for organised crime groups now. Most people think it's drugs, but actually it's people if you look at the value associated with it.
It's been going on for quite a few years and it's been a national thing, it's in the national news. However, we found out about it in Humberside and we set up a team. So on the South Bank in Humberside, we've got the Child Criminal Exploitation Organised Crime Team and that's set up in September 2018. And since then we've been targeting organised crime groups that are their main sort of role is targeting our vulnerable people, so that's adults and our children. So our team's been set up to sort of disrupt them, target the offenders and make sure that we safeguard the vulnerable people.
Criminal exploitation is the exploitation of young people and, all young people and vulnerable adults. And it's where a perpetrator would exploit a victim to get them to do criminal activities in the gain of the perpetrator. So if we're talking criminal exploitation, the way we're mainly affected locally is through county lines exploitation.
Basically, phone lines are set up kind of externally, and then because we're described as an import town, so an organised crime gang would maybe have a phone line set up in, for example, Cheshire. They would then use vulnerable young people to potentially run drugs
So that could be cuckooing of vulnerable people's addresses to take over the address, or the child criminal exploitation part of that is grooming children into dealing drugs on their behalf. So they get the children to actually run with the drugs, so they'll go and deliver it, drop that off to the users, or take them from house to house. So the actual criminals haven't got the drugs in their hands, so if the children get caught, they're not getting caught for the drugs themselves as the criminals.
So we had 2 stabbings within a period of, I think, about 3 months in mid-2015. And one of them was a young man who'd not been known to the service very, very long at all. We weren't sure whether that was in a county lines model or whether that was just part of dealing that goes on, but essentially he was being used to traffic and deal drugs in North East Lincolnshire. And he'd gone to deliver some drugs and collect the cash for that, and had the drugs taken from him and wasn't given the cash. And when he tried to insist that he needed to take the cash back with him, he was assaulted with a knife and severely injured. The young people talk about having a code and, we're not grasses. Young people tell us all sorts. They generally tell us what they're involved in. They generally tell us what their mates are involved in and what other people that they know are involved in. But on this particular topic, they weren't talking to us at all. And so there was a bit of a code of silence. And so it was clear to us that other people had a greater hold over them or a different relationship with them than we'd seen previously.
The side of it being scared, yeah, we're from Grimsby. I know all these county lines with the Scoutsers and the Manx and the Londoners and Brummies, yeah. I know, they probably put a fucking petrol bomb through your mum's window and shit like that, do you know what I mean?
I was oblivious to it, but where I work, I hear lots of stories, and it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. So when you're down the street, I've even witnessed a drug deal with a boy and a girl that looked about 15. Clear as day, they was just doing that, and I was like, the more aware I've become of it, the more I'm seeing.
I've never had role models yet. If you look up at someone, yeah, and he's got the nice clothes and nice shoes and he's got a nice girl, he's got a chain, he's got a car, whatever, yeah, he's got all this, yeah. That's not a role model. It is a role model to some people. To me, yeah, I looked up to them people, and them certain people looked up to, and I wanted to be like them, and so there was role models.
I think Grimsby struggles from this mainly due to the poverty that suffers around Grimsby, where there's not many jobs for people to gain. Financially, they're unable to provide for themselves, but also the young people are trying to provide for themselves by getting involved in it. I think that's why they come here, because families don't have the financial stature to be able to support the young people with the nice clothing, the tracksuit, and the cannabis use that these young people are using daily. And I think that's the main problem.
They've seen their parents probably not work for years, living on the dole, earning money and smoking drugs, and they think, well, that's going to be the lifestyle that's for me as well then. So it's that mirrored behaviour that just keeps continuing.
Well, you think any exploitation of any person is really bad, but when you look at how they work with children, so initially it could be something simple as, do you want to earn some money? Do you want some new trainers? Actually, do you want to feel belonged? Do you want that kudos of feeling looked after, being supported in the community? Look who I'm sort of associating with, which is really appealing to some people, especially if they come from a chaotic background and they haven't had that affection or attention, and it's a big draw from. So that's how they initially engage you, but then start looking at, right, forcing them to work long hours, 24 hours staying up, living in trap houses where there's needles, drugs users, it's a horrible environment. Then they're getting taxed by other gangs, so there could be weapons involved, being attacked. Then if they lose the drugs or the police take the drugs off them, then a debt goes onto them. So you imagine as a child having a drugs debt to an organised crime group, how do you pay that back? How do you come to your parents? How do you come forward to the police and tell them that you're in this situation? So you can imagine the trauma that a child has to go through in that situation, because they don't know what we can do, because they'll be told by these criminals that if you go to the police, we're going to attack you, we'll attack your parents, we'll attack your house. So you imagine the trauma and what they're actually dealing with themselves, and actually thinking, how do I escape this? Because I think there's no escape whatsoever. So what we're here for, and with the other teams and partner agencies, is that you can come forward, you can come to us, and we will help you, and we'll deal with it.
There's some kid, I think it was over half ounce of weed. He got all his front teeth knocked out, yeah? By some kid, yeah? This kid's like 13, I think. About 13. And the other kid's like, same age as me, 17, and he's got some Scousers to go bang the kid's teeth out. You know what I mean? This kid's 13, what are you doing that to this kid for over some weed?
The pull into criminal exploitation is bigger than the push away. However, it takes usually until they get to a reachable, teachable moment, and that's when they've experienced extreme trauma and violence, where they come to that point where they may be ready, and that's then when we can maybe we can give them the extra support that they need. But sometimes in the beginning, it is really, really difficult.
Ollie was kind of introduced to say, look, it doesn't just affect that one person that's involved, it affects the family. So Ollie had moved closer to Alfie, and then there was threats made towards Ollie and his mum. So it just shows that it wasn't just obviously affecting Alfie, it affects everyone around you.
The statement, what was said to me once by a young person I work with, he actually referred to an organised crime group as his second family. And that's what he said regarding them, because he didn't see himself as a victim. He said they was his second family compared to his mum and his dad that he was seeing. Mum and dad was working, they was financially providing for him, but he saw something different in this set of people and actually classed them as his second family.
We also see with young girls in the area is the boyfriend model that's used. So we'll have adult perpetrators that will groom young girls and pretend to be their boyfriend, and kind of, for the young girls it's real. They genuinely love these men, and they're being, fed with affection, clothing, relationship, and it sometimes just becomes sexual. And for these young girls, again, it's that older boyfriend who's got a car, he's got money. For a lot of young girls, that's quite enticing, and it's difficult to pull them away because they're emotionally attached.
So a trap house, really, and this is probably where it's an address where they're dealing drugs from. So this is where they'll actually run the drugs from. So people come to that address and purchase drugs, and they will actually go in the address and use drugs there. So you'll get drugs users in there. So some children will actually be in that address to actually deal the drugs to these people. So they're in a horrible address. I mean, it's not very nice, it's not properly furnished, there'll be needles all over, there'll be drugs paraphernalia, sometimes electricity doesn't work, there's no beds, there's no food. So imagine being in a real cold, dark address with drugs users coming in and injecting drugs in that address as well. So that's pretty much what a trap house is. And then we have a cuckooed address, and what this is where we get drug dealers that will target people within our community. So are they vulnerable? Do they have mental health issues? Are they learning difficulties? Take over their address because they can't look after themselves, let alone fight off an organised crime group. And they've then got a place to actually either store the drugs or start dealing from. And also they'll use another sort of tactic around that, is where they'll get a drugs user and say, would you like free drugs? Can we use your address? So they'll start using their address but give them free drugs, and then say after a while, actually, you've got to pay for these drugs now, so you've got drugs debt, so you're going to have to run for us as well, and they start using their address. So they've taken over vulnerable people's address, whether that's a drug user, an alcoholic, or mental health, or vulnerable in a different way. So it is a different tactic that they will use, is to get an address that they can control, that they can deal drugs from.
The young man that we met yesterday would ring us as the graft workers and say, I've been told if I'm found, I'm going to be shot, I'm going to be bundled into the back of a car, I'm going to be stabbed, I'm going to be cut up. And looking at the evidential information of eventually him coming forward with who that might have been that's done that threat, it's highly likely that the threats would be carried out.
On the face of it, you might see them a stereotype with a hoodie on, hanging around. Oh yeah, they're just up to no good. Why are they? They're just a child. They dress like that. That's what the society dresses like today. What's actually going through their mind? If they've been forced into it, they can't just stay at home. They've been told they're going to petrol bomb your house, we're going to stab you. They've got to go out and do that. So on the front of it, they might have this face of bravado, but inside they're absolutely terrified and don't know what else to do, so they have to go along with it.
How do you recruit people? They don't give a fuck about you, mate. So, all right, we need them kids. You know what I mean? We need that kid. He'll do us some good. He'll make us some money. Do you know what I mean? You might act like, yeah, you're one of the boyos, but nah, mate, you're not. You're just there for a certain fucking reason.
How do you meet the needs of children who are engaged in organised criminal activity that have been groomed and are now essentially strongly under the grasp of those organised crime groups? How do you move them away?
If we just take out the runners that are dealing drugs, they're usually the vulnerable people, and the management of the organised crime groups are the ones that are still facilitating it. So if we took out a child, obviously we can safeguard and we'll look after them. However, the organised crime group will still function. They'll try and recruit another child or another vulnerable person. So the aims of our team is to take that middle management out, because if we remove them, then we've got no people that are then targeted and are vulnerable.
So we tend to try and engage them in a way that they're comfortable. So it could be in an environment where they want to meet us. It could be public, it could be in school, their home, a base where we are based, wherever they're most comfortable.
Unlike other services, we've got the ability to be able to go 2-3 times a week, depending on how serious the case is and how much they're involved in that exploitative situation. And I think you could spend 6 months going to the house, knocking on the door, being told to F off, and then you're going back 2 days later and you're trying again. And I think they see the fact that you're being consistent to go around to make that relationship, and that makes them think, and they then understand that no, actually this person wants to work with me and help me, rather than just somebody else who's going to come into my life, upset everything that I'm doing and then clear off again like other people previously may have done. And I think that's one thing that we all kind of focus on.
Up to the age of 16, there's a lot of kids that are doing stuff because they ain't got nothing, they can't rely, they can't turn to nothing else. You shouldn't prosecute them kids. People are victims, yeah, of stuff they're doing to survive. They're just doing that stuff because when they got, like I know lads, yeah, they just go home, yeah, they got a mattress on the floor, they ain't even got a quilt, mate, they got a blanket, they ain't got no pillows, they're eating fucking a tin of beans for breakfast, do you know what I mean?
So what I don't want to do is tell everybody in North East Lincolnshire that all children are at huge risk of criminal exploitation, and we all need to go running and screaming, thinking to protect our children and lock our doors, because that's not the case. It's not of that size. But it's of sufficient size in particular areas to be really worried.
The first Alfie story, that was showed in school, and it was very effective because people were like, oh, that's very hard hitting. They didn't know what goes on. And I think it's because everyone's so closed in now with social media, they just see all the perfects in life and not what actually goes on. So that education in school, and we even showed it to the younger years, like the year 7, and it was really effective because it scared them off getting involved with it.
It's early intervention, it's spotting the signs. For me, it's spotting the signs, it's knowing where your child is, it's knowing who they're talking to, what they're doing, checking the social media.
People at school are going to see me, people at the youth centre I help out are going to see me. That doesn't bother me because I know it's out there for good purpose. The message needs to get out there, so I feel proud to be in it myself. So it's just getting that message out.
In terms of innovative stuff, I think Not In Our Community is a really good example of what is innovative. There isn't a similar kind of service or input anywhere else in the country. So we are using young people in the right way to get their ideas around how to influence their peers, to make them more resistant to being brought into that kind of lifestyle.
What we must continue to do is these children must be seen as victims first and offenders later if they need to be.
Stay at school, right? Don't even get involved with it at all. You know what I mean? Because as soon as you get involved with it, that's it. Your life, that's all you can think of. I can't stress enough, yeah, about it's up to you. It's Grimsby, yeah, shit goes on, but you've always got that chance to get away, especially if you've got family behind you.
When you say do a lot of things,
You can contact the police, you can contact partners, and we've got all these mechanisms in place now to support people, so don't feel alone, come forward. But also, if you're not involved in it and you're a business person or you live in the community or you're a parent, these are the key things that you need to be looking out for. And if you see it, contact the police so we can actually look into it and help people. And that's the main thing, it's more of the awareness raising, and for people that are involved in it, that there is a way out and there is support for you, not to sit there and dwell on it and worry about it on your own.